بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه ومن سن بسنته واهتدى بهديه إلى يوم الدين. Dear respected viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to this show, this new series which is titled Purification is Half of Iman, At-Tahur Shatrul Iman, the saying of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And inshallah, through this series we're going to be looking at the different aspects of purification regarding a person's purification with regards to wudu, with regards to ghusl, with regards to tayammum, with all these aspects. Inshallah, we'll be looking at it in the coming weeks. And also this program, because it's live and you're here live at Star TV, is that it's an opportunity for you to phone in and ask the questions, inshallah. So we're going to have the short lesson, and then after the break will be your chance to phone in and ask the questions that you have, either related to this topic, purification, or if you have any other questions, then we're happy, inshallah, to deal with them. The number to phone is, if you want to phone this show after the break, is 0203 397 2095. So what do we mean by purification? What are we talking about? The most important thing in terms of purification, I know when we talk about purification, when we talk about tahara, we're thinking about wudu, we're thinking about ghusl, we're thinking about water, which is fine and which is important. But what's the most important part of purification is not the external part of purification, it's the internal purification. Here inside your heart, how pure is your heart? How clean is your heart? Is your heart something which is full of love and compassion for others, mercy, wanting to help, anticipation of reward? Or is your heart full of all these different types of diseases that actually pollute the heart? Anger, hatred, envy, arrogance, pride, all these things which actually make the heart bad. And as we know, and the Prophet ﷺ said that the heart is the actual source of guidance for the rest of the body, because if the heart is good, then the rest of the body is good. إذا صلح صلح الجسد كله وإذا فسد فسد الجسد كله. So when the heart is good, the rest of the body becomes good. Now, this series, we're not going to talk about the purification of the heart and how to get a good heart, which is the aspect of tazkiyah. But I just wanted to mention that at the forefront, that we have a duty as Muslims, as humans, to search for the purification of our heart, to find Allah, and then to actually purify our heart so that it is clean from all these things that pollute it, so that we become better people, better individuals, better worshippers of Allah, better slaves of Allah. So that is a duty which I think everyone should try and look for, and that is one of the tasks and the missions of the Messenger, وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ, to purify them. So inshallah, I hope that we can look into that a little bit more, and maybe if we have a chance in a different series, inshallah, we look at the purification of the soul. So what are we talking about when we're talking about purification is half of Iman? We're talking about how do we achieve the ritual, the physical cleanliness, which is important for us, because as we know, this is such an important part of Islam, because we know that salah is something that everybody has to do. It's fard, it's obligatory that you have to do salah. And in the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, لا يقبل الله صلاة بغير طهور. Allah does not accept a salah without purification. So you have to have the methods of purification. You have to be pure in your body ritually. You have to be pure physically. The clothes that you wear have to be clean. The place that you wear has to be clean, and so on. So that's what we're going to be addressing, inshallah, throughout this series, which hopefully will allow us to learn the ahkam, the rules, so that we can practice Islam correctly. Because if we want our salah to be accepted, then we have to have our purification to be accepted. And if for our purification to be accepted, we have to learn the rules and regulations related to that, inshallah ta'ala. First of all, we're going to start by talking about one thing which is essentially, when you look at the people of fiqh, when they spoke about the purification, they spoke about a very important part, which is almost like the essence of all purification, and that is the means for purification, which is water. Water, which is this liquid, which is colorless, tasteless, odorless liquid, which Allah has made as a reason or a means for our purification. So when we talk about purifying ourselves, cleaning ourselves, washing off the physical impurities, this can only be done with what is known as water, ma'. Because when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks in the Quran, He talks about ma'. وَنَزِّلُ عَلَيْكُمْ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً طَهُورًا. He causes to descend from the sama, the heaven, ma'an tahura, purified water. And also when He talks about the verse about wudu, and He also talks about the absence, or He said فَلَمْ تَجِدُوا مَاءً. If you cannot find ma', water, then you go to the other means. So the essence is water. That's what we have to do. So we can't do purification with something that is not water. You have a cup of water and that water gets mixed with some orange juice. If you look at that, that's no longer water. That's got orange. It smells orange, tastes orange. It's no longer water. You can't use that water for your purification, to wash your body in wudu or ghusl, or to wash the najasa of the clothes. Similarly, it could be a tea. It could be something called rose water, which is essentially the extract of roses, which has a pleasant smell. It looks like water, it's colorless, but definitely is not water because it has the odor and the extract of rose. So that is an important part that we have to understand when we are talking about purification, is that we must use something which is water. So if that water changes in its color, changes in its smell, in its taste, if any of the characteristics of water, these three characteristics, color, taste or smell, any one of them goes, such that for any individual he would look at it and say, will say to him, is this water? And he'll say, no, that's not water, that's orange, that's tea, that's that's rose water, that's this, that's soap water. All these things cannot be used for the act of purification or tahur. Islam is an easy religion, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made things easy. And obviously we know that there are times which are difficult and things like that. So there is a clause that our scholars have said to make it clear, and they said an insignificant change which does not remove the name of water is excused. So say you had a cup of water or a bowl of water, and a few drops of milk were to fall into that water, and you were to look at that water and you say, this is still water, we can't say that this is not water. Then that is actually means that this still is acceptable. It's an insignificant change. We're not going to be very difficult with this category. Also, the ulama talk about what kind of waters can we use and what kind of waters can we not use. So we said that essentially the water which is this pure water, which we all know, we know what the water is. Sometimes there are aspects of water which might have a little bit of difference about, but Allah has given us the indication of where all these pure water has come from. Like I mentioned to you before, first a short while ago in the Quran, Allah says that we send down from the sky ma'an tahura. So that's one source of water, which is the rainwater. And anything that is similar to rain, so snow or hailstones which have similar source of rain, they also can be used as a source of purification. And indeed the Prophet ﷺ used to make dua. He used to say, Allahumma اغسلني بالماء والثلج والبرد. Oh Allah, wash me with water, meaning rain, with snow, with the hailstones, indicating that these are pure forms of water. And not only are they pure, but because they've just recently come down from the sky, they are unchanged by or unaffected by the pollution of the earth, whether it is real pollution, material pollution, or whether it is actual spiritual or ritual pollution. Also, the sources of water include things like wells, water that comes out of the wells, like Bi'r Zamzam, or like Bi'r Buda'a, which was one of the wells at the time of the Prophet ﷺ that they used to have in Medina, and other wells. Also, you have things which are springs, water that springs out from the ground. Again, a great source of pure water. So all these things are sources, and in addition to that, you have the river water, because the Prophet ﷺ, he said in a hadith, he said, if one of you had in the door of his house, he had a river which was flowing, and every day he would wash from that river 5 times, do you think he will have any dirt remained on him? They said no. So the Prophet ﷺ said, this is the salah. It's like the salah, because every time you enter the salah, you are cleansing yourself, you are purifying yourself, so you don't have the impurities related to sins and so on. But he gave the example of the river because the river is a source of pure water. And another indication was the seawater, because some people had the understanding, said, well, is seawater, the seawater is salty. And I just a while ago I said to you that the water, pure water, doesn't have any taste. But here they said that this salt is an inherent nature of the sea. So even though the seawater is salty, it is still used for purification, because the Prophet ﷺ said, هو الطهور ماء الحل ميتته. It is the sea, it is that which is water, is pure and purifying, and it's dead animals, meaning the dead fish and the animals that come out of the sea and are dead, are also halal to eat. So these are our different sources of water that we... Now obviously we open, nowadays in our homes we have the taps, and we open the taps and we get the water, and essentially that tap water, where is it from? It's either from rain, it's either from springs which come from the mountain, or it's from wells, so it's all coming from the same source. Just because it comes through your tap doesn't mean that it's a different source of water. Now there is something that we add here, which is what the ulama mentioned. They said is disliked. So it is preferable not to use water which is very hot or water that is very cold, because when you use water that's very hot or water that's very cold, it takes away that, you don't do your purification as well. Imagine you are very boiling water, you're not going to be washing your limbs and your face and etc. the best way you can. And similarly, if it's very cold, the same thing is going to happen. So they said it's better to avoid, it's disliked to use water which is very hot or water which is very cold. Try to just use a water which is acceptable for your body. Obviously, if you don't have there's no option but these waters, and then you have to use it. Maybe it's a very cold day and the only water that you have is cold, then that's fine. You can use that cold water, but just take into consideration that you must wash your limbs properly, which inshallah we'll talk about later on. There is something which also, when we talk about water, we talk about something called used water, al-ma' al-musta'mal. And this is something that some of the scholars mentioned, because it is something that we need to understand. And that is when you use water either for wudu, which is to remove a ritual impurity, we call something which is al-hadath, or you use water to wash something which is najis, something which is impure, then that water which has been used becomes used water. So when it becomes used water, it cannot be reused again. So you have like a bowl of water, you can't use that water to wash your face, and then any water that is remain from that, you reuse it again. They call it used water. And similarly, if you had a big tank or a bath of water or whatever, and you just put your hand into, or you soaked something in there to wash it, once you pollute. We say pollute means you've used that water, you cannot reuse it again for purification. It's maybe still pure, but it does not have the power for purifying. That's why we have to be careful that when we use water, we don't use it in a way that we are reusing it. Because the Sahaba, even though there was a scarcity of water, they never reused the water for purification, because they understood that once it has been used, that's it, cannot be used again. Now there are some concessions with regards how things are changed by water, and some things that some of the scholars have mentioned about that. For example, if you have some water, I mentioned to you like an insignificant change, it doesn't count like a change. Maybe a small drop has fallen into the water, again that doesn't affect. So small changes is not is excusable. Also, if something which is like a dead animal, a dead insect, an insect which doesn't have any blood, falls into the water, again, there is an excuse that the Sharia has given us. So we know the hadith of Prophet ﷺ said, when a fly falls into the cup of water of any one of you, then let him soak it 3 times, or push it through it 3 times, dip it 3 times, because in one wing there is disease and in the other wing there is healing or medicine. So again, that has showed us that things like insects which are not flowing blood, they are considered an excuse, and they do not make the water take away its actual cause. Unless you actually, as some of the scholars say, unless you actually take the insects and put it in the water yourself. That is because, why are you doing that? Why is that kind of messing about? You don't need to do that. If the insect falls in the water, that's it. Islam says to you that water is fine, still use it. But if insects actually, you bring the insect and you put it in the water, or you bring some salt and you add it to the water, you are changing the water by yourself. So it does no longer become water which can be used. So these are aspects of some of the things or concessions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us with regards water. Now there is an important part as well when we talk about sometimes the quantity of water, and that's also something which some of the scholars have mentioned, and it's based on a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If we have one glass of water, and we know that in this glass there was, say, something which is najis, something which is impure, fell into that water. Could be maybe some urine or some blood or something like that, went into that water, and we saw it, and we know that it's gone into there, then we say that this water has become najis, it's become impure, cannot be used. Okay, because we know that something najis has gone into it there. But if that amount of water was a large amount of water, and the Prophet ﷺ mentioned something called qullatayn, which is like 2 big jars. He said, إِذَا بَلَغَ الْمَاء قُلَّتَيْن لَمْ يَحْمَلِ الْخَبَثِ. When the water reaches 2 qulla, which is equivalent to 216 liters. So when the amount of water is so much that is more 216 liters or more, then even if something najis falls into it, it will not make it najis. So if you have a large quantity of water and something which is impure falls into it, does not make it najis, unless that impure stuff is so much that it actually causes the water to change. It changes this 216 or more, changes it either by changing its color, its taste, or whatever. But if it doesn't, then it is still pure. It still has that effect. So there's almost like a Prophet saying is that there is a cutoff point, which is the 216 liters, qullatayn. These were 2 jars that they used to hold water in. If the water is as much as that, it will not carry the najis. So inshallah, what we're going to do now is going to go for a break, and then after the break, inshallah, we'll be back and we have opportunity for you to phone in and ask your questions. If you'd like to phone in, the telephone number is 0203 397 2095. So be with us and we'll see you shortly, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to this program. Purification is half of faith, exclusive to Star TV. I'm Omar El-Hamdoon, and before the break we were talking about the importance of purification. We mentioned we started to enter the important part of purification of wudu, and this is your chance now to ask any questions. If you have any questions, then you can phone in now and put your questions to us directly, which is telephone number is 0203 397 2095. So make that call if you want to ask any questions. So what we were talking about is what does actually make wudu. What is the basis of purification, which is like wudu, ghusl, etc. And we said that it must be water, and we said there must be pure water, and we mentioned the characteristics, the taste, the smell, and the actual color, and we said the things about changing. So all these things are the ulama are quite specific in trying to make us understand that we have to use water, and if the water changes, then we cannot use it. But how does it change? If something pure comes into the water, it's still pure, it's still nadif, it's still clean, but you cannot use it for wudu. And if something najis falls into it, and again inshallah in the future we'll talk about the different types of what is najis and what is impure and so on. If something falls into that water, not only we cannot use it, but also the water is not pure, unless the water is so great in amount that it's more than 2 qulla, which is 2 big jars, which is equivalent, we said, to in modern volume it's equivalent to 216 liters, because the Prophet ﷺ said if the water reaches the amount of 2 qulla, then it will not carry the khabath, which is the impure things. The next point that the ulama also mentioned to us, which is an important point that they put in here into this subject, which is the aspect of using gold and silver, because there's a big idea about how the issue of gold and silver, but they mention it here specifically because somebody might have a gold bowl or a silver bowl which they might use for their wudu. So that's why they mention it in this context. So they said that it is prohibited to use gold and silver vessels except for necessity. So you need to make wudu, you need to get wudu, don't use something gold, because the Prophet ﷺ said that whoever eats or drinks from gold utensils, then he will be punished by that in the fire. It would be like pulling that in his stomach in the fire on the Day of Judgment. He said whoever eats from these utensils in this life will not use them in the next life. And also because gold and silver is like money. It has a value. People buy with gold and silver. So when you are using gold as your bowl, or you have a gold, sometimes we see people, they have gold cups, gold pens, gold cars, gold, all these different. It's a form of extravagance. It's a form of arrogance. The poor person, he doesn't have even, things, gold to use his basic things. So that's why we should try and avoid it, inshallah. Okay, we have a caller, a first question. Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.
Yes, you're live. What is your question?
Hi. I was reading a hadith the other day, and I read that when you're making wudu, that you shouldn't really keep overdoing it if you think you went wrong.
Okay.
Because I read that there was a jinn or a devil. I forgot what he's called, but he makes you kind of forget what you were doing and make you doubt yourself.
Yes.
So I was just wondering if you had any further knowledge on this topic.
Yes, Jazakallah khair. That's a good question there. So inshallah, as we will study later on about wudu inshallah on a different day, is that when we do wudu, we can do wudu by washing once or twice or 3 times. This is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. But when you start overdoing it, so you start doing 4 times or 5 times, then this becomes an extra aspect of the deen which you shouldn't be doing. Because what happens is, some people say, okay, I'll just do a little bit more, make sure. No, Allah has already given you He's already told you what you can use. Do it once if you want. So even if you just washed your face once, that's fine. As long as you wash everything, it's fine. You can do it twice, you can do it 3 times, because the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, توضأ النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم مرة, he did it once, and he did it مرتين, twice, and he did it ثلاثا, so he's doing everything 3 times. But he didn't do anything more than 3. So when you start doing more, you actually start to go down the line of the deen where you're making things a little bit hard. Or as the brother mentioned, there is a shaitan who specifically wants to cause problems for the human by always making him think and whispering and doubting himself. Did I really make wudu? Did I not make wudu? Let me do it again, let me do it. And this kind of action is not good. And the best way to cut out this action is just to stop there. Say, khalas, I'm not going to do it, that's it. Because Allah doesn't want you to live your life sort of like this in between things. You know, did I do that? And even when we talk about salah later on, when we talk about your wudu being broken, it has to be based on certainty. You can't be basing it on doubt, because our deen is based on certainty. So you do things which are based on certainty. So Jazakallah khair for that question. We still have time for one or two more questions. If anybody would like to phone in, the numbers inshallah appearing on your screen. And I was just mentioning that the scholar said that it's prohibited to use gold and silver vessels, and they said not only for wudu but even for other things. They said even if it is as small as an eyeliner vessel, you have an eyeliner for kuhul, there's a small container or whatever, and that's made out of gold or fully made out of silver, they said don't use that, because that's value, that's money. You should be using it in another way, and Allah has given us other means. But they said sometimes you can use some aspect, like sometimes in the past they used to have cups made out of clay or wood. And what they used to do, when they used to drink, this rim used to become very quickly cracked. So they used to strengthen that with putting like on it a rim, a silver rim, for example. So that would give it strength. So they said, the ulama said, that's strengthening, that's for a reason. It's for a purpose, so that's fine. You can use it. Or sometimes they used to put like a small chain to hold the cup near a drinking place. Again, there's a reason there for you. But when it starts to become so much that you start to engrave the cup and you put decorations of silver or whatever, it becomes so much, then they said it is not acceptable. Also, a question which rises here: what is the rule about watches or equipment which is plated with gold or silver? So you have a gold-plated watch or a gold-plated pen or whatever. So that these gold-plated things, they are not gold, but the outer part is gold. So basically what the ulama have said, the scholars, they said there's basic thing is that if the amount of gold on this item, whether it's the watch, whether it's a pen, whether it's any item, if the amount of gold is significant enough such that if we were to melt the object and to extract the gold, we would get a significant amount of gold, then they said this is haram. But if the amount of gold that is plated with this watch or whatever is so little, it has no real, if you would try to get all the gold out by melting it, there's nothing, there's hardly anything there, then they said that's fine, that's halal. So that's the kind of balance that you have between assessing whether a gold-plated item is halal or haram. You have to assess it for the amount of gold that's in. Obviously, a watch, a gold watch for a man would be haram. But if a woman had a gold watch because it's part of her jewelry, then we know that gold can be used as jewelry for women. And indeed silver, little bit of silver for men is allowed as well. A couple of rings is allowed, not extensively, because jewelry usually is the practice of women, that they are, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمَنْ يُنَشَّأُ فِي الْحِلْيَةِ. It talks about the women who are brought up amongst jewelry and gold and so on, because it matches with their feminine nature. So the tahrim, the haram, is using gold for items which don't need to be used as gold. Cups, bowls, spoons, plates, etc. But for jewelry, it's acceptable. Or gold indeed for coins, buying and selling with gold and silver is all allowed. And so therefore, inshallah, we're gonna just summarize, inshallah, as we end today, is that purification is an important part in our deen. And it's not only just important, it is fard, it's obligation that every Muslim learns the ahkam of purification. He needs to learn and she needs to learn, because this is what their deen is based upon. And they can't go on practicing their deen not knowing what is correct wudu, what is not. You know how many times we see not just children, you know, sometimes you see adults and etc. who don't do their wudu properly, or don't know the ahkam of wudu, or don't know what to wash correctly, and that as a result means that their wudu is not correct, and if their wudu is not correct, their salah is not correct. So it's a duty on us to learn that, inshallah ta'ala. So jazakumullah khair for listening. This show inshallah will be every Wednesday at 7 o'clock, where we'll be looking at the aspects of purification, and it's your chance to learn a little bit about purification, inshallah, and also your chance to ask questions as well. Jazakumullah khair for being with us tonight, and we look forward to seeing you again next week if Allah will. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.